I have so many notes. By the way, how come you haven't made fun of me for wearing a Cowboys jacket yet?
Because you love the Cowboys.
I know, but I thought you would have made fun of Dallas and Houston, and I don't know. I just assumed you would make fun of the Cowboys.
Well, you went to your first, was that your, no, that wasn't your first Cowboys game. Second?
Second, but probably my last because we got absolutely demolished and it was embarrassing.
That's kind of the theme I hear these days.
No, I'm gonna go back. It was just really hard to watch. Anyway, I'm surprised you didn't make fun of me. That's all.
Houston's the best. We have better food. We have better people.
There it is. Holly bingo.
Welcome to the LeadrPulse Podcast, the podcast with actionable insights for leaders revolutionizing the world of work. I'm Holly Tate, Chief Marketing Officer here at Leadr, and on today's episode, you get to hear from Matt interview Nick Mehta, who is the CEO of Gainsight and Entrepreneur of the Year for Northern California. Nick has led Gainsight to win the best company culture by Glassdoor. And so in this episode, they unpack how he's gotten there, how he's built a award-winning culture. Also, before we jump into today's episode, I wanted to let you know about Leadr Academy. If you haven't heard already, Leadr Academy is our manager training program. We've got over 30 customers and over 300 managers that are now a part of Leadr Academy after we launched it a few months ago. So if you want to learn more, go to leadr.com. That's leadr.com, where you can learn more about Leadr Academy. Without further ado, let's jump into today's episode.
All right. Well, Nick, so great to have you here today. How you doing?
Matt, it's so good to see you. Thanks very much for having me. Love what you do. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. We'll love it. Hey, so let's just dive in. I want to start by just congratulating you. You won the Glassdoor Healthiest Company of the Year, Culture Carrier of the Year award for 2023. That's kind of a big deal.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. It was actually, I'm not going to lie, when I was in Mexico at the time on vacation, and my chief people officer at the time, she's since retired, but she called me, she texted me, she's like, hey, I don't want to interrupt your vacation, but you probably want to know this. And then she told me the news, and I think I was alone in Mexico somewhere, jumping up and down on the beach, people wondering what's going on. And there's a lot of these awards out there that, you see, oh, wow, that's cool. But frankly, some of those are just a little skeptical. And this one was, voted by the team. And by the way, it's not perfect. Gainsight's absolutely not perfect. We have so many things we need to work on, especially during this kind of tougher time in the downturn. But yeah, I was very grateful. Absolutely.
Well, I was going to say that the fact that you did it during a downturn, you're a tech company in the midst of all the challenges that we're facing these last few years. Tell me the secret. What is it? How are you navigating becoming the healthiest, best cultured company in 2023? That's wild to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. And by the way, I think the climate has gotten even worse. So it's we all have to be
right.
And it's a tough decision. So I don't want to pretend like we don't have the same challenges and decisions and all that. I think there's as I've thought about it, there's almost like a floor of culture, even in tough times, and then people feel even better when things are going great, right? Same Gainsight everywhere else. But what's the floor when things are not great? And I think that is what the culture is all about. What keeps people here during hard times? It's interesting. Gainsight has an off the charts tenure. You go into a meeting and it's I've been here 7 years, I've been 9 years, I've been 5 years, I've been 10 years, I've been 12 years. And it's amazing, right? And there's some things you have to mix in new people, which we're working on.
Sure.
But what keeps people at a company when things are not easy and not good? And I think that is culture. And I think there's not really one secret to it, but if I just gave a few things that mattered to us, one is as you and I are both friends with Dan Steinman, and I know he's on your board, and Dan can attest, the very beginning of Gainsight, we created these values. We have 5 values, and they're just in the water. A lot of our employees, I always ask them what's special about Gainsight, even when they're leaving, and they're the values are actually real. And I can talk more about how we do them. But then I think there's practically then, how do you be really transparent about the business and what's going on? And that's another big part of it.
I love that. Well, there's this saying, the fish rots at the head, which is
exactly
quite a spicy saying, but it's the culture is established and set, not just defined by the leadership team, but exemplified by the leadership team. So I've got a story to share from Dan, if you don't mind.
Please do.
he told me this one moment you had when you were building Gainsight, and I think you were hiring 150 people in a quarter, something bananas. You guys were growing like crazy. And you got a cease and desist letter from a competitor where you poached some staff from. And Dan said to you, hey, what if they turn around and start poaching your staff? And he recalls this quote, which I'm going to read out to you because I think it's beautiful. You said, hey, if that happens, that's my fault as the CEO. If I don't give our team the best opportunity to advance their career, then they should go somewhere else. That is on me to make sure they don't leave. That's incredible leadership, Nick. Tell me about just your perspective there, because I think so many other leaders would say, like, let's get into a fight. Like, no way they're going to steal my staff. That's not going to happen. So talk to me about that humility posture that you had, because that's wild.
Absolutely. Well, now, one thing about the story is you said poaching from the competitor. I'd say no, they applied to us. We didn't poach them; they applied to us.
Yeah, I love that.
But I remember getting that letter actually like as yesterday. And by the way, the person that sent that letter, ended up moving on to another company. He's great. We know each other really well. And it's kind of a good story how business, everything always works itself out, and
Right.
you get past the emotional side. So I think the quote itself, for me, the biggest thing was, I think, you look at what we do, which is customer success software. It's about helping your customers be successful, but retaining them by keeping them successful. It's the same thing for employees. It's like you, as a CEO, you have to earn the right to have them you have to win their business every day. Employees business. That means providing a challenging job that's helping them grow and the right values and all that kind of stuff, right? And every time somebody leaves, it's us not delivering what they need. Now, sometimes that's fine. By the way, they may need something else. I'm actually very close to a ton of our alumni. We text and talk all the time and help with the careers, and some of them go on to be CEOs, or that's amazing actually. But remembering that, like, if somebody leaves, it's not that person. Don't get angry at them. Like, a lot of CEOs, by the way, get really angry at the person leaving, which is horrible. When somebody's leaving, I'm like, hey, thank you for what you've done. Congratulations. How can I help? Et cetera, et cetera. And so I think when you think about the competitors or other companies hiring, same thing. I'm like, more power to them. Like, if that company has a better value proposition for our employee than we do, then they should go. And by the way, we should learn. And maybe it was fine for them to leave. Maybe we screwed up. And so, yeah, I don't view it emotionally at all. I'm like, hey, this is a learning opportunity for us.
That sounds like something so easy in theory, but so difficult in practice. So kudos.
Yeah, because I've gotten people, and not competitors even, but people that are in other spaces. They're like, I can't believe you hired my employee. I'm like, they wanted to go somewhere else. That's not my fault.
Yeah, I love that posture. That's so good.
So many mic drops. That was 6 minutes and 12 seconds. And I feel like that was like a whole book.
I have so many notes.
I mean, I wrote down, okay, maybe we should start from the top because there were so many things. The first thing I wrote down was the floor of culture when things aren't great. The question of what keeps people here in hard times. What a great way to create your culture, like from the ground up. I've never asked myself that question of like, what keeps people at Leadr in hard times? I always think like, what will attract people to Leadr? What will help them stay for a long time? But not thinking about the difference between good times and hard times. That was really powerful.
What keeps people at a company is culture. That is such a powerful statement. I did a podcast this week, and he said, the podcast interviewer said, how do you define culture? And we were talking about, well, culture is if your values are lived out on the front lines. And we were talking about if their experience reflects what's written on the wall. And it's true. I mean, how often do we say this is what we want the culture to be, and it's very altruistic, but it's not actually real. And so, of course, you're not retaining your people in your hardest times.
I was, my brain was just thinking about, because we have had to do layoffs a couple of different times. And what I'm thinking about that's really interesting is we've had a really high retention rate after those.
Yes.
The times where we have not had a high retention rate, from my perspective, I'm curious if you agree.
Yeah.
Was not after the layoffs. It was because of a poor leader in a spot that was kind of dampening the experience for those people that left. So that's like, I'm just kind of reflecting on that for us, you know?
He said this word, which I think we overlook and we undersell, transparency. He said we do a really good job of transparency. And so I know Gainsight has been impacted with how difficult it is to sell during an economy like any other company, during a tough economy like any other company. But I think what Nick's leadership exemplifies is transparency from the top. And I think what often it's easier to fear as a leader is that if I'm transparent, I'm going to scare people away. But you actually draw them in because you create a sense of vulnerability. You create a sense of like we're all on the same team, that there's no hidden secrets behind closed doors. And so I would encourage leaders to be more transparent than not. I would find the line of what's too transparent and maybe put like a pinky toe over that line, because more transparency, I think, is a good thing. And I think that really shows healthy culture is your ability to trust your whole company with the transparency of what's really happening in the team. What are your thoughts?
What have you learned about the line of transparency though? Because I've also heard you say before, like everybody wants transparency until they get it.
Until they get it, I know.
So yeah, what have you, like, as you've navigated being a CEO for the past 4.5 to 5 years, where have you kind of found that line of the right level of transparency?
Like where it's bit me by being overly transparent.
Mm-hmm. And not necessarily where it's, I mean, sure, that'd be a good story, but like, yeah, what is the right level? Because
I think there's a line where it goes from encouraging and people feel like trust has been extended, and then suddenly you cross over a line where you're displacing a burden or anxiety that is yours to own. So that's a very gray measure, but there is a line where it goes from like, oh, this is so helpful, Matt's sharing what's really happening. Oh, it's so good that he trusts us with this information. Then all of a sudden it goes, ugh, that stresses me out. I'm going to go home and tell my family about that one. That's what you don't want. And so there's a burden that we have to own as the leader, and that is not a burden that you should share with the team. And whether that's financial stability and job security or anything to that effect, that stress is for your stress to carry and not your stress to displace.
yeah, and that he actually, I feel that reminds me of what he said about like, it is my fault when Dan was like, but what if they, what if another
Come and
company's
coach out people,
our
yeah.
people? And he's like, that's my fault then as a leader, and that is so powerful.
So powerful.
Yeah,
I
because
really appreciate his posture around leadership. Didn't you get the sense listening to him of, I want to come work at your company? Like,
oh yeah, it's
just,
he has extreme ownership as the CEO,
yes.
and that
Yeah.
is so rare.
The first words out of his mouth when I congratulated him on the award was, "We aren't perfect. We can do better." Like, I love that posture. They've not arrived.
It's so good. Yeah. Oh man, you struck something I was gonna say about we were talking about transparency and I lost it.
Well, yeah, maybe it'll come back to you. I think the part that leaders, that people listening or watching might be wrestling with is, if you're losing your people, don't try and find a finger to point or someone to blame. It's on you.
Yeah, look at yourself. Yeah,
Look
that's
at
what it was.
yourself.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so then that's also similar to like, I think at the end of the day, every business problem is an executive problem, right?
Yeah.
It's like product market fit or sales performance or, to what they help solve, which is customer retention,
Yeah.
or employee retention. Like at the end of the day, it starts with us at the executive team. And so to your point, that stress being felt all the way at the front lines. It's like our team needs to understand the context of why we make decisions, but they don't need to feel the stress of making that decision.
That is the perfect summary. That is the perfect summary. Yeah, John Maxwell says 90% of problems can be traced back to a leadership problem, right? And so I think leadership matters, and I think there is a time and a place for transparency, but there's certainly such thing as too much.
Yeah.
Can we talk about a quote that he said at the end? He said, we're in the customer retention business, and you have to look at your employees the same way. You have to win their business every day.
Yes.
That,
Mic drop. Oh my God.
I've never thought about it that way. Have you?
Oh no, not at all. It's amazing.
If you have anyone that's running an organization is customers. And so you're constantly thinking, how do I keep them happy? How do I add value? How do I keep them around? How do I keep them raving fans? We've got to apply that same logic to our team. How do I win my employees' business, quote unquote, every day?
Yeah.
That,
It goes back to, I think, trust, right? Because that's our customers that are our best customers trust us to help them find solutions, to put them first, solve their problems, like all of those things. And our employees, it's the same. They
yep.
want to trust us to have their best interests in mind and help provide the tools and resources that they need to win. And so that is a fantastic perspective. Yeah.
What was the quote that Elizabeth Bryant shared with us last year that we've mentioned a lot about?
Yeah.
Don't jump straight to thinking about revenue. It starts with development of your employees, and as your employees are developed, your customers will be happier, and then revenue will increase. Is that the flywheel she talked about? Do you remember how it went?
Yeah, it's exactly the flywheel, that when you take care of your employees, they take care of your customers, and
Yes.
that's what takes care of your business.
Yes. And so I wonder if there's someone out there thinking, I don't have time for that. I've got to worry about revenue. It's the same thing. So winning your employee's business, quote unquote, is winning your customer's business.
So good. And I was just at a conference this week. Well, we both were, called the Fellowship Gathering. And my big takeaway, the former chief marketing officer of Chick-fil-A, who I will have, I hope, I haven't asked him yet, but David, will you be on season 3 of the LeadrPulse podcast? Just over and over again over the last 3 days, what was talked about was the fact that our brand, our external brand, is an extension of our internal brand. And you cannot separate the two. And so another woman who spoke, who helped build Union Square Hospitality, said she got hired by a hotel chain, it was a grocery store, to be the friendliest grocery store in America. And so she took them on as a client, and she fired them as a client within 90 days because every store that she walked in had grumpy employees. And so she's like, I can't help you with your brand problem if you're not willing to hire and train for happy employees.
Yes.
They just refused to see that. Like they just wanted like a cutesy brand. Like, give us a logo and a value prop that just says that we're the friendliest, that you walk in the store and everybody's grumpy. Like, it doesn't work. And so I think Nick, what he's taught us today is, they have to have a culture of treating their employees like customers, and then their employees will then go take care of their customers. And that's why they've won the Glassdoor award. So congratulations, Gainsight. And we're just so lucky to have Dan Steinman, who is their chief evangelist, on our board, who helps us and grow Leadr every day. So it's awesome.
So good.
Thanks for listening to today's episode of the LeadrPulse podcast. Make sure you sign up for our LeadrPulse newsletter that we send out every week with insights from the one and only Matt Tresidder, our co-founder and CEO, and my co-host of this wonderful podcast. You can do that at leadr.com/pulse. That's leadr.com/pulse. We also want to encourage you to follow Nick Mehta on LinkedIn and learn more about Gainsight at gainsight.com. We'll see you next time on the LeadrPulse podcast.